Hey, I'm for them grave. You already know how this shit go. Shout out DG Proud of you. Touch me. Don't even look at me. You already know how this shit go. Back the fuck up. All you bop assholes, all you goofy ass niggas. Drums, we got sticks, ayy, ayy. We got drums, ayy, ayy, ayy. Ayy. We got drums, we got sticks, ayy, ayy, ayy. Bitch, don't run, you get hit, ayy. Ooh. I fell in love with my blick, ayy. Ay, we been through all type of shit, ayy, ooh. Ain't no day suck this dick, bitch. Ayy, in that straight, this bitch stick shit. Ayy, you should see the way this bitch trips. Ayy, ain't no ride home, you getting a lift, bitch. Ayy, walk up in the club, I got my heat in that bitch. Ayy, standing on the couch, I got my feet on that bitch. Ayy, Da Vinci head to toe me, cause I'm fleeting a bitch. Ayy, my car is pushed to start, don't need no key for that shit. Ayy. Bitch, I make you run. It's a blickathon. I can't rate that bitch a 10. I give that bitch a 1. Now give my niggas some. Until my niggas come. You can tell these bitches anything. These bitches dumb. You brought your biggest gun. We brought a bigger gun. Ain't no stingy nigga. I'm gon' give your niggas some. Christmas time came around. I bought my bitch a gun. Shorty chewed up on his dick like it's a stick of gum. Yeah, I smoke exotics. And my bitch exotic. And my car robotic. Ain't no question if I fucked your wife, that bitch a boppy. Ain't no question if I got my pipe, cause bitch I got it. Bitch. We got drums, we got sticks, ayy, ayy. Bitch don't run, you get hit, ayy. I fell in love with my blick, ayy. We been through all type of shit, ayy. Ain't no day suck this dick, bitch. In that straight, this bitch stick shit. You should see the way this bitch trips. Ain't no ride home, you getting a lift, bitch. Got my blick on me, my stick on me, yo bitch on me. Okay. Don't get blicked on me, I shoot it till this bitch on E. Ain't no shooting at no cars, I shoot this bitch on feet. Then we shoot straight to the block, now we back on D. Bitch, I never care. We be everywhere. It's a blickathon. We might shoot it anywhere. Bitch, I'm never scared. I keep my weapon near. Matter of fact, I'm double-breasted. My shit come in pairs. Soon as I walk inside the club, I get to clutching. Took my shirt off in that bitch, that's cause I'm bustin'. Bitch nigga thought it was when it really wasn't. Soon as we left the club, we let off a dozen. No, we let off a dub. We was off some drugs. We weren't shooting at no wheels, bitch. We was walking up. All my killers blood, make you cough it up. Shouldn't have mentioned phone up name, you shouldn't have brought it up. We got drums, we got sticks, ayy, ayy. Bitch don't run, you get hit, ayy. I fell in love with my blick, ayy. We been through all type of shit, ayy. Ain't no day suck this dick, bitch. Ayy. In that straight, this bitch stick shit. Ayy. You should see the way this bitch trips. Ayy. Ain't no ride home, you getting a lift, bitch. Ayy.
We Japanese still. You getting cooked in front of your family like a Japanese meal. It's y'all shoot the hibachi and none of you niggas can stop me, but can't help but watch me. So look, bro, I've been wanting to do this video for a minute because you niggas love race. You love the concept of race. You embrace race. You that's all you aspire to be is fucking whatever your racial category that you think you belong in. So that's what I'm here for, man. We got drums, we got sticks. I told you niggas a year ago that this is the Bond 2 expansion all over again. I'm coming to destroy all of you hunter-gatherer ass niggas that's holding on to the old ways. I'm coming to peel your motherfucking cap back, man. Stop fucking playing with me. You got people on the internet that's supporting this notion of race. And it's like, where the fuck y'all been? Y'all must have been on Mars or fucking Pluto some fucking where or wherever Ron Dalton believes white people came from. You know, Sirius B. Nibiru somewhere because you haven't been in the United States of America. You damn sure haven't been on the planet Earth. If you're venerating race, but what else do you expect? It's backwards ass people. Backwards. Our culture comes from rednecks. Everything we do comes from rednecks and it permeates through us. Right? So, I don't make these videos because I'm some revolutionary. I don't make these videos thinking that, oh man, my videos is going to touch the hearts and minds of 30,000 people or 3 million people. I make these videos because they're black pill. That's just to let you know this is what's going on. Here's the correct information. If you choose to go with the correct information, it's on you. But this is what's going on. We're in a downward trajectory, and if we continue to go down this path of following race politics or identifying yourself as race and thinking that people have, I can't even get this shit out. It's so silly that people are pre-programmed to be the way they are. Right? It's a predisposition. It's nothing that they did. Not culture. It's not the things that they experience in life. It's not what they learn. It's just that they're pre-programmed to be a certain way. You keep continuing down that path, which is the path we're in. So we get our ass whooped politically. We get our clocks cleaned politically. You've been spanked and you submit to the Democrats. And the only opposing force, they racist, right? You call them racist. So black people ain't going to run to them, right? Everything that you choose, I'm talking specifically to what we call and notify as African Americans. Everything that you choose, for the most part, has a negative impact. So it's like black pill. Here you go. You made your bed, now lie in it. You pissed in the bed, now stay there until it burns. This is what happens, right? So these ideas and concepts that we're holding on to, I'm black, I'm pro-black. I remember D-Red a year ago was like, black this, black. I'm like, yo, all that shit is bullshit. Now you can call yourself whatever, you can call yourself Pikachu from Pokemon, nigga. All of that's bullshit. That's why a lot of you guys hide behind the black moniker or the white, whatever moniker that you have, is because you believe that has some kind of biological standing on your ancestry, or that has some kind of unifying factor. If I say I'm black, we all the same. We not all the same. You niggas are not the same as me. I'm not the same as you. Now, if you want to talk bioancestry, a lot of us are different. You guys have been robbing people of their diversity by saying race this, race that. This is why we had some idiot on the show the other day did not believe that a black person could be EM, what was it? EM 123. No, y'all confused. Y'all meant EM 132. No, I said what the fuck I said. As we also covered in a paper before, that in the free slave population, free African population in Central America, they found a couple brothers with EM 123, which is also known to be in Jewish groups. But the reason why you can't accept that is because race. That's a black motherfucker. And these people are white motherfuckers. They not the same. When we read book after book, source after source, showing that there's crossover, your social fucking categories are not biological. And there's no consistency with it. Because you can have somebody that's Baba TV don't look like no fucking typical African American, but you call him black. Why? Because it's just social. Social doesn't require two people to have sex. It just needs to be said and accepted. That's it. That's why, oh, Baba TV, he black. This person black. That person black. Then you have another group that's more physically or more inclined on the phenotypical level, or morphology level, and you won't even say they black. That's why I say it's all social bullshit. It started off as social bullshit, has nothing to do with science, real, actual, repeatable science. It has nothing to do with biology and genetics. It has everything to do with a social hierarchical system that was employed and used to enforce and justify chattel fucking slavery. And that's what you niggas are proud of. I'm proud to be black. You Marcus Garvey ass niggas, man. We say over and over again to ad nauseum, genetics does not reflect on race. You can have a white person that you would deem and classify as a white American, and he can be more African than fucking you. What I mean by that? His direct descendants are African slaves or freed slaves. We've read story after story on the channel to ad nauseum, and vice versa. It's even more common with African Americans. It's even more common. And then y'all say some blatant racist shit, which goes back to the KKK. It goes back to the Dixiecrats. It's the same talking point regurgitated in Frankenstein today. Y'all not going to change. You're going to continue to be the shitbags y'all been for the past 70 to 40 years. You're not going to change because you love that shit. You have parabonded with these people and these ideologues and their ideologies. Same thing with the Black Hebrew Israelites. Yeah, you don't want to accept. See, thank you. That's a great example. Oh, Guerrilla Hebrews he's black, but he don't even fit the phenotype. If it's a phenotype argument, he don't even fit the phenotype of a dark-skinned man. He don't even fit that. But when you go to East Indian motherfucker, Pakistani, they dark as fuck. Why you don't call them black? Why don't you designate them as black if it's biological and it's innate? You motherfuckers is goofy. Everything you say is goofy, man. Silly. None of this shit comports with genetics. None of this shit comports with biological reality, empirical reality. None of it. That's how you know it's social. You can apply it to any fucking body you want to apply it to. Biology don't work like that. That's social. That's why y'all say, I don't care what you say, I'm still black. Yeah, you can say that because it's social. But what does your fucking DNA test say? What does your DNA match with? You match with Europeans, or you match with East Asians? Or you match with Jews? Or you match with Yemeni people? No matter what fucking color you call yourself or what racial system you put yourself in. None of that shit matters when we talk about biology, but you're trying to mesh the two because you want to verify and validate the shit, which is idiocy. It makes no damn sense, and it boils my fucking blood. Why does it boil my blood? Because I know idiocy is winning in the black community. It always has and always will be. There ain't no change in that shit. It's black pill time, nigga. Most you niggas hate education. Most you niggas are, you call all science the white man science. You don't even take out time to learn and understand it. Understand it without readers. And all I get an understanding. Bible believers. You want to stick to these old KKK, Ku Klux Klan, Dixiecrat, you know what I'm saying, Nazi ways of thinking and scientific racism. Second Exodus, I'm starting to believe the same shit, man. There's no cure for this shit. We listen, black pill, we doomed, man. It's the plague. All you can do is run from it. All you can do is run from it. That's it, man. All you can do is run from the plague. Ain't nothing else you can do about it. Ain't no fucking cure in this shit. You niggas have signed y'all motherfucking, y'all signed y'all shit away already. Right? So that's why when we read these sources, it doesn't mean nothing. When we give you a proper understanding, it means zero because it goes against your pro-black fucking narrative. And when you look at the history of race and how it has been applied all the way up to today into modern times, it's disgusting. It's repulsive. And you cleave to it. It's so funny. Oh, y'all don't, Africans didn't come up with no fucking hierarchical racial system. That was made here in the colonial Americas, in colonial Europe. That's where it was made. That's where it has an inception. Now y'all make it a pro-African. They ain't got shit to do with Africa. First of all, y'all call yourself, African is the same thing as black. Okay, North Africans are not quote unquote black. You ain't gonna call them black. You ain't gonna call a Moroccan black. You ain't gonna call a Libyan black. You ain't gonna call nothing. A lot of y'all gonna call them Arab invaders, and don't say you don't, because you already did this on fucking video. We already did the videos, Reggie. We already reviewed your shit when you said that, Reggie, Reginald. But they African. None of this shit works, just like Muteza says in his book. All of these groups have crossover, whether it be geography, language, culture, whatever. What you think is a racial distinct group, there's a lot of genetic crossover. And that's what blows holes in the theories that you guys want to attach yourself to. But guess what? We're in a losing stick on everything. Politically, black people are fucking losing because you guys side with the idiots. You guys side with the most horrendous group to ever exist in the United States of America. The group that spawned the Jim Crow era, the Black Codes, the group that fought to keep your ancestors as slaves. That's the group y'all vote for religiously. And then when we come with the education side, when we deal with science, you guys still fight for racism. You guys still fight for scientific racism and classifying people on color and saying that's all that fucking matters. And then you try to hit us with the Nazi science saying people are predisposed to being the way they are genetically. These are all Nazi and Dixiecrat talking points. Oh, black people are lazy because they come from tropical areas, and white people are more industrious because they come from cold areas. And in cold areas, you got to work hard to survive. So that's why they got a work hard mentality. And black people are lazy because they come from, tropical areas where all they do is lay down and eat coconuts all fucking day. That's you niggas is saying the same shit they were saying 100 years ago. And glorify it. You niggas is pseudo, man. But the pseudo is always going to win in this community. It's pretty much cultivated for that. That's why Black Hebrew Israelites are getting big. That's why they gotten big. This is why all these Afrocentrics are big. Sonetta is big. Because you guys love that shit. You're married to it. It's true. You guys are married to it. Anyway. Let's get into some sources, man, because I tell you what, bro. Sometimes you gotta wake up and smell the fucking roses. That's why I push individualism. If anybody listening with some sense, make sure you and yourself is right, man. Don't worry about this hive mind. That's another thing race make you do. Hive mind shit. Oh, my people ain't doing bad. I'm doing bad. No, you make sure you getting up every day taking care of your fucking business. Don't let them trick you out your situation because they saying, oh, you black, you should. Fuck them niggas. Them niggas ain't giving a fuck about you. Them niggas is terrorizing their community right now, nigga. My sister just got pregnant by a nigga with 4 different baby mothers. That's black power, nigga. That's black unity. We supposed to celebrate that shit, right? We all black, right? You black, so it don't fucking matter because it's skin color. Because the group that you put him in. So whatever the fuck he does, and whatever the fuck my sister does, and however the outcome comes for my fucking my niece, that don't matter because at the end of the day, they're all black. That's how you dumb motherfuckers think. And the only time you can see something wrong is when someone's white and doing it. You guys are fucking idiots, man. And all we can sit and do is sit back, drink, and enjoy our fucking night and make sure every morning we doing what we gotta do for ourselves. Don't get tricked, man. Don't let these niggas trick you. A lot of you niggas be opening up y'all fucking wallets and donating to these niggas. For fucking what? For what? You niggas supported Polite for years, made this nigga rich. Y'all made Ron Dalton a fucking millionaire because he said he brought a whole bunch of fucking pseudo shit in the book, and Kyrie Irving posted this shit on Twitter. That nigga a millionaire now. What did you get out the deal? Not a goddamn thing. Focus on yourself, become an entrepreneur, get a trade, get a skill. That's what we've been teaching on the fucking channel. For those, I'm speaking to those that got sense. I know majority of y'all don't, but the few that do, focus on yourself. Don't focus on this hive mind collective shit. That's what be fucking y'all up. I'm just saying that D-Red told me if a nigga break in his house, when him and his wife and kids staying, that's their fucking sanctuary. that he ain't gonna kill that nigga. He gonna shoot him in the fucking knees. I wish a nigga would. I'm opening his chest plate. Y'all done took this pro-black shit too goddamn far, man. Let a nigga come in here with me and my wife. I'm killing him, nigga. Give a fuck if he black. You invade my house. Y'all niggas take this. This shit is retarded. You niggas are idiots. Dullards. Dilettantes. That's what the fuck y'all are. Shit's so goddamn stupid that you believe in this system so fucking much, this racial classification so much that you will impede your own progress. God damn, dude. And then get mad at Jewish people. You're upset. I'm talking to you black Hebrew Israelites right now. You're upset at Jewish people. They got their shit together. Get yours together, nigga. Fuck you doing, nigga, but making YouTube videos and starting fucking camps, nigga. Where your hospital at, nigga? Why you ain't in no motherfucking skilled positions they in, nigga? Ain't nothing stopping you. Oh, I forgot, I'm black, the white man hope. Shut your bitch ass up. It's always a fucking excuse. That's another thing I hate about this racial shit. You use it as a fucking crutch. Ain't nothing stopping you from doing anything. You just made a bunch of bad fucking decisions. That's what the fuck you did. You made a string of bad fucking decisions, and now your life is in shambles. No, it's because it's hard because I'm black in America. No, it's because you made bad decisions. No one told you to get 4 fucking baby mamas. Nobody told you that. You did that on your own, nigga. But it's all good because he black. Same thing with Polite. The nigga is going to trial for molestation of a fucking minor. But since he black, the community is giving him a pass. Saying, oh, these young girls, they fast anyway. I don't give a fuck if she was fast, flashing them or what. That's a child, nigga. That's a fucking child. And y'all on the internet supporting this nigga. You niggas, you disgust me, man. Every single one of y'all. That's why I don't fuck with none of you black Hebrew Israelites. Y'all ain't no fucking different. None of you Afrocentrics. It's the same shit with y'all. You just regurgitated and remixed the damn shit, man. Uno reversed the whole shit, like I said before. That's why I play my drill music. I don't give a fuck if you're offended. I play whatever the fuck I want to play on here. Because it's no point to this shit at all. It's just pure fucking entertainment. Because there is nothing coming out of this. Because you're going to continue to follow the bullshit. And subscribe to the bullshit. And if anybody speaks out, mob rules on his ass. If anybody tells you to do better for yourself, it's 1,000 motherfuckers that's going to jump on his ass or jump on her ass for even attempting to correct the situation. Now tell me I'm fucking lying. And it all goes back to this concept of race. Us black people should stick together. Hell no, I'm not sticking and standing by your side when all you do is promote and do bullshit. Hell no. If I'm building a business, I'm not looking for skin color. I'm looking for people that got the skills to get the goddamn job done. Whether he black, Chinese, Hispanic, or whatever fucking racial classification they got. Can they do the damn job? And you know what that's called? Logic. Logic. Same thing with interracial marriage. Right now, the internet is going crazy because they got something called passport bros, and black men are deciding to go out and venture out and marry other women outside of American black women, I guess. That's the issue. You hate yourself. You hate your mother. Bitch, why do you care? Why? You think you own every fucking male? Because they black, right? Since they black, you fucking own them and you control all their fucking actions. They're not allowed to do any goddamn thing because they black. Went on my in-laws' house. I'm like, man, I vote conservative, man. I'm not with none of that shit y'all talking about in Democrats. You black. Nigga, the Republicans freed the blacks. You idiot. But you can't say that because of your in-laws, right? You black. Why you vote for? They racist. So since I'm in a category, or you put me in a social fucking category, that means you control all my actions. That's that hive mind shit I'll be talking about. I'm not allowed to do this. I'm not allowed. Bitch, please. If I followed y'all regimen, I'd be fucking broke, homeless, down fucking bad. If I followed y'all fucking regimen and y'all fucking logic, let's talk about it. Y'all don't want to have a conversation, man. All you niggas is goofy as fuck, man. All you niggas from the Garfields to the Israelites, to all you niggas, man. LOIs, IUIC, ICPK, all you niggas is goofy as hell. Every single one of y'all impede your own progress with this race shit. That was just some bars from Chess. What in my heart is, yes. Now let's get to this motherfucking article, man. You niggas is crazy as fuck. Anyway. Unsubscribe. Dislike the fucking video. I'm not thirsty for fucking views. I tell you that right now. Anyway. So this is the first article. Y'all ready to learn some shit. Y'all ready to learn. Somebody got to be out there ready to learn something, right? That's the white man sign. Why? Nigga, y'all got the concept of race from white people. That's be the funny shit. He talking about the white man sign, but you talking about the concept of race, which does not come from Africans, does not come from melanated people like y'all like to say now, that hip shit. It comes from fucking white people. It comes from white Europeans. Oh, my God. Anyway. Yeah, I'm not here to play with y'all. I'm here to upbraid. So let's talk about race and why this is all a fucking myth. I don't know why I have to tell y'all this. It should be fucking obvious. But I got to do a video on it because some people play. They play games. I only got one controller for PlayStation 5, so I ain't going to play with you, all right? Let's get right to it. Oh, here we go. At the end of the show, I'm going to drop the link to the rise, and I want you to explicate this. I want you to explain to the people that black people made up racial division. And no, I don't have all the answers, but I do got some sense, and I know how to fucking read, and I know how to study, and I know how to research. That's how I got out that fucking Black Hebrew Israelite bullshit, reading and researching. Anyway, human geneticists curb use of the term race in their papers. Field still struggles with how to accurately describe population study finds. This is an article that was made in 2021 by Rodrigo. It says here, human geneticists have mostly abandoned the word race when describing populations in their papers, according to a new study of research published in a leading genetics journal. So we're going to read why this is the case. Why do they shy away from using the word race? Which you guys are all like, these people, you goddamn right I'm upset. You goddamn right I'm upset. I'm attached to a group that's full of fucking dilettantes. You damn right I'm upset. But I bet you won't bring your ass up here and explain yourself. Damn right, that's a woman tactic. You mad? Yes, I'm fucking angry. I am upset. You sound mad. Yes, I'm fucking mad. You don't like it? Dislike the video, unfucking subscribe, report, do whatever the fuck you gotta do, man. It says here, that's in line with the current scientific understanding that race is a social construct. See, it don't got nothing to do with biology. This new hip shit is trying to make it seem as if, oh no, biology does not comport with fucking race. It does not. The idea that all black people have the they're all the same and all black people have these innate characteristics is not true. Science has not stamped that. Modern science, modern genetics has not stamped that. All right. See, this is what I be talking about with you niggas. It ain't just the fucking internet. It's our reality. Tell me our illiteracy rate of young black males. Then get back with me since it's just the internet. The illiteracy rate, the behavior. The fact that people subscribe to this fucking race idea and they hinge everything on it. It's just the internet, man. That's why I say you niggas don't live on planet Earth. You can't. You gotta be on Nibiru or some shit. You gotta be. We losing in every statistical category. And you want her talking about some, don't get worked up about the internet, man. That's why I black pill, bro. Y'all doomed. I don't know what to tell you. You fuckers are doomed. Anyway, that's in line with the current scientific understanding that race is a social construct and a welcome departure from research that in the past has often conflated genetic variation in racial categories. And that's what people are doing today. They're trying to look at genetic variation. Oh, this person has a different nose. This person has a different skin color. This person has a different hair type, and try to conflate it with these racial ideas, right? Says Vince Bonham, a social scientist at the National Human Genome Research Institute, who led the study. But alternative terms that have gained popularity, such as ancestry and ethnicity, can have ambiguous meanings or aren't defined by genetics. And that's what y'all don't fucking understand. They're not defined by genetics. The idea of black, white, this group, none of that shit is defined by genetics. None of it. Zero, zilch, nada. But you want to pretend like it is because you want to buttress it. You want to keep race alive. And you're doing a good job because majority of people will support that. And that's the fucking problem. It says here, suggesting researchers are still struggling to find words to accurately describe groups delineated by their DNA according to the study. In the 19th and 20th centuries, many geneticists embraced the idea that there were races such as Negroid or Caucasian that were distinct biological groups. And this is the issue. People still think like this. This is 19th, 20th century. Why are niggas still thinking like this? Why? Why are we still feeding this beast? Let the beast die out. You don't want to because you have found an identity in it, you glorify in it, and you venerate it. You understand? You are the spiritual children of Blumenbach. I've said this 1,000 goddamn times. You're the spiritual children of Woodrow Wilson. You think and speak just like him. These men died 100 years plus ago. And you guys regurgitate their talking points today in 2023. That is fucking crazy. No advancement at all. It says such race science help perpetuate discrimination and inequality. And this is what y'all glorifying in. This is what y'all happy about. It says scientists have now thoroughly demonstrated the lack of biological basis to racial categories. I mean, this shit is simple, man. Why do I have to make a fucking video about this? It's because we are inundated by fucking idiots and dilettantes. And y'all support the idiots and dilettantes. You will continue to support the idiots and dilettantes. Ain't nothing gonna change. We on a downward trajectory and we're headed right down to the bottom until we all crash out. That's it. It's that fucking simple. It says here, to better understand how geneticists have used population descriptors over time, Bonham and an interdisciplinary team dove into the archives of the American Journal of Human Genetics, which has the longest history in the field of genetics. Editors of AJHG gave the team access to the journal's entire archive. The researchers quantified specific terms in the full text of 11,635 articles published from 1949, the year the journal started, to 2018. They found the word race appeared in 22% of the papers in the first decade, but its usage declined to 5% of papers in the most recent decade. So back then, they were still pushing that scientific racism in a lot of these articles, a lot of these papers. Again, 1949 and 1959, you don't have an understanding of genetics. The field of genomics is still quite new. So they were holding on to a lot of these racial talking points and propagating these racial talking points through these scientific papers at the onset, right? It says the decline of the uses of race reflects how geneticists slowly came to understand race as a social category with biological consequences. What are some of the biological consequences of race? Limiting people from marrying outside of this quote unquote race. The treating of certain people as saying people are slated to be slaves. Again, we covered in a prior episode that your skin color became your slave branding. Because before the concept of race, you would have to brand your slave. Now it made everything more easy and convenient by just saying the black skin is the branding. So those are the consequences, right? So the team writes in a paper published today in AJHG. The researchers also found that terms associated with racial groups such as Negro and Caucasian, which was used in 21% and 12% respectively of papers in the first decade, started to decline after the 1970s. In the last decade, fewer than 1% of papers used those terms. This decline confirms such labels are not based on immutable biological order, but shift in tandem with social context. Lamest terms. What does immutable mean? Not changing. That's what the people think. Oh, black people ain't never changed. I had somebody say this in Facebook earlier when I was trying to explain to him that the Yamnaya have been confirmed to be a brown and dark-skinned people. And he says, well, why am I white? Because you believe in immutable biological order. You believe that your ancestors have to look exactly like you. Why does people like him think like that? Because of the idea of race. That's why you think like that, because race tells you that we are all immutable and we're stuck in these categories and stuck in these groups and we're distinct from each other. And that cannot be further from the case. Case in point, the people of Chad and sub-Saharan Africa have an African sub-Saharan morphology, but they themselves descend from European hunter-gatherers. There's no way you can change that. No matter how you think they look, no matter how you depict them or how you think they fit in your social context, at the end of the day, their ancestry goes back to the Balkans and Central Europe and Sardinia. So let's read that again. It says here, this decline confirms such labels are not based on immutable biological order, but shift in tandem with social context. The author writes, this paper provides a window to view the history of a society of scientists that had a big impact and how racial terminology and racial thinking was used, says Rick Kittles. We all know who Rick Kittles is. He's a famous African-American geneticist. He's over what's that AfricanAncestry.com. You know, and he himself is a European descendant, but he has a dark skin. He has dark skin. He has a morphology that you guys will not deem as congruent with modern Europeans, right? But his ancestry still stems back to that, which just kills the idea of race. Because again, race has always been seen as immutable groups, unchanged groups, meaning your ancestors were one way and you are just like your ancestors. That's just fucking silly. And you guys in 2023 are fucking teaching this. You guys are backing this up. Vernon, yes, they were brown skinned to dark skinned people. We covered that to ad nauseum on the channel, actually. I think I did a video about the skin color of the Levantines and everything on it. It says here, where did we leave off at? Here it is here. When race is used in genetic papers today, the study found it is more likely to be accompanied by the terms ethnicity or ancestry, perhaps because the ambiguity of the terms led researchers to simply combine them and therefore dodge the definitions. That just means that geneticists are as confused as everyone else, says Fatima Jackson, a biological anthropologist at Howard University, who was not a part of the study. The National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine recently established a committee to produce a consensus report on the use of race and other terms as population descriptors and health disparities research. Other researchers are exploring how to adopt an anti-racist posture in genetic publications. One can't be cavalier about how one describes populations, says Bruce Korf, a geneticist at the University of Alabama. You need to be intentional, close quote. Although the paper deals specifically with the use of language, the words in many cases have deeper roots that we must face as a community, Korf writes in accompanying editorial. He says that AJHG is updating its authored guidelines and working on the phrasing of population descriptors. To acknowledge the past, geneticists helped shape the racial categories still used to discriminate today. The American Society of Human Genetics, which publishes AJHG yesterday, announced the launch of a year-long project to explore past injustices perpetrated through genetics, such as eugenics. Kittle, who is part of the new initiative, says it was spurred by the Black Lives Matter movement. It's important to recognize ASHG's past links to racism in an effort to correct and provide a healing in the future, close quote. He says in the next 2 days, researchers will discuss the history of eugenics in a series of talks at the National Human Genome Research Institute. About time, Jackson says about the ASHG new initiative. Anyway, so that's the article there, why geneticists curb the use of the term race in their papers. And again, as the paper has said, a repeated theme in the paper is that race does not comport with biology. No matter how you try to phrase it or try to play semantics all goddamn day, it just does not. The idea of race has nothing to do with biology. Again, nobody is immutable. We change. We have mutations. We admix. Again, we always use the example of a man going to Japan and marrying an East Asian woman and having East Asian children, or Japanese children. The children are going to pick up phenotypes from the father and the mother. Then if they continue to mix with that population, the children are going to begin to be more like the population they're mixing with, which brings me to another thing on race and what's pissing everybody off right now. A recent paper was released stating that E1B1B and E1B1A is found in Chinese populations today. Now, why does that make people upset? And why are there a lot of white nationalists or whatever you want to call white racists, white supremacists on the internet bugging out behind it? It's because their ideas of race. They believe that E1B1A equals black, and therefore black people don't belong in no fucking China. It's just simple shit like that. Like your idea of race causes you to do shit like and say shit like that. That ain't no black people over here. Who said anything about black, your damn social category? Those people probably look like the fucking locals, right? They probably like the local, the E1B1B carriers there. They had a high prevalence of E1B1B carriers in two specific tribes in China, two specific groups, I should say, in China. They mad at that. Oh, why is there such a high African presence amongst these people? Because your ideas of race and the boundaries that come with it. Niggas ain't supposed to be in China. You even had like Garfield pose a challenge to us saying, why is E only found in Africa? Haplogroup E is not only found in fucking Africa. What the fuck are you talking about? It's that racial typological thinking that we were talking about. That's why I got to keep covering the same material with you guys until somebody fucking gets it. I got to keep going back. I got to keep going back to the same shit over and over. All right, hold on. So from here, let's go to this paper here, written this year, 2023, on sciencenews.org. How about that? How about that, man? And at the end of the video, I'm going to drop the link, and I want brothers like Judah Rise to come up here and air your grievances, right? But you better come with some facts. You guys are known for just being semantic scholars, right? You just want to say some shit to make it sound good. Better be backed up with something. But anyway, this is from Science News. Why experts recommend ditching racial labels in genetic studies. Such labels don't explain biological and genetic diversity, but can cause stigma. Any problems with that? You Black Power niggas has got problems with that. All right. Human biological diversity is a continuum, but racial labels imply that people fall into discrete categories. This is what makes it false. Right there. I don't know how many times I got to say it. I don't know how many times I got to keep repeating this. I don't know how many papers I need to read on this. Y'all believe that, oh, well, Black people are in their own little pocket. No, they're not. You got Black people that descend from Europeans. You got Black people that descend from West Africans. You got Black people that descend from Native Americans. It's just that fucking simple. All Black people don't think the same. But that's another idea of race. These people all think the same. They're brute. They're lazy. They're shiftless because they come from these tropical areas. They're not smart. They don't do well at SATs. Tell that to the fucking Caribbean Blacks and the Nigerians. Say that to them. That exceeded all that shit. Which are more genetically, quote unquote, African than the African American group. Explain that shit. Since everything is about your race, it comports with biology. And your characteristics and your behaviors, you're immutable, you can't change. That's bullshit. It says here, for that reason, race should no longer be used to classify populations in most genetics research, a U.S. National Academies panel says. Race should no longer be used to describe population in most genetic studies, a panel of experts says. Using race and ethnicity to describe study participants gives the mistaken impression that humans can be divided into distinct groups. Such labels have been used to stigmatize groups of people. Oh, I gotta say this too. You got Balkans. Let me show you a picture of Balkans real quick. And before I gotta go just show you a Balkan, man, for all you people that believe in race. Let me go to the Balkans. Let me get some people. You got Balkans. These people. You got a large percentage of these people descending from ancient Africans. Immutable my fucking ass. This is the shit I be talking about. This is why I don't stand idly by while you all spit this bullshit. This is how they look. Race does not put you into distinct groups. There's genetic crossover in all these goddamn groups, man. No matter how they look, no matter what language they speak, that's another fucking fallacy. I don't speak none of the West African dialects, but I know my ancestors were there. I'm EU 290. I don't necessarily look like my ancestors because people. That's not a. You look. No, I don't. No one's a spitting fucking image of their fucking great ancestors. But that's that idea of immutable racial groups creeping in that you guys still believe in. These people that proposed this shit at first, they're all dead, but their ideas live through you niggas. Their ideas live through you niggas. Let's go back. Let's go back. All right, so it says right here, such labels have been used to stigmatize groups of people, but do not explain biological and genetic diversity. And like I brought up earlier, the Chadic people being ancient Europeans, and then the certain people groups in the Balkans being descendants of ancient Africans. There are a lot of Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, that are descendants of ancient Africans. We have read the paper on the damn channel. They Caucasoid. Who gives a fuck how they look or their morphology, their skull shape? That does not tell you their ancestry. Which is a shot in the face and a slap in the face to anybody that's pushing this immutable race shit. Because you got Jews that descend from Africans. And we read the paper about many of these people, Middle Eastern populations have African fathers, African paternal lineages, and European or Eurasian maternal lineages. Oh, but they look like I don't give a fuck. Did you hear what I just said? Go sit in the fucking corner and time out. Go sit in the goddamn corner, man. Don't make a sound. Just fucking listen. And I'm checking your notes after class. It says here, such labels have been used to stigmatize groups of people, but do not explain biological and genetic diversity. It says, in particular, the term Caucasian should no longer be used. The committee recommends the term coined in the 18th century by German scientist Blumenbach to describe what he determined was the most beautiful skull in his collection carries the false notion of white superiority. The panel says. Worse, the moniker has also acquired today the connotation of being an objective scientific term, and that's what really led the committee to take objection with it, says Ann Morning, a sociologist at New York University and a member of the committee that wrote the report. It tends to reinforce the erroneous belief that racial categories are somehow objective and new natural characterizations of human biological difference. We felt that it was a term that should go into the dustbin of history, and I concur. Similarly, here you go. All the pro-black people, I'm black and I'm brown. We all got to stick together and cut our skin. Here you go. Here's the part for you. Similarly, the term black race shouldn't be used because it implies that black people are a distinct group or a race that can be objectively defined. And that's how y'all fucking use it. This is how y'all do it. And then y'all get super racist and say, when I say black people, I'm talking about slaves. That's exactly how the Dixiecrats used it. A black was a slave and a slave was a black. Y'all doing the same shit. And that goes back to, the stigma. I don't know how many times I got to say this shit too on the show. Everybody that you categorize as black are not descendants of fucking slaves. Some of them motherfuckers were slave owners. Some of their ancestors were slave owners, man. Some of them people that, we are. No, we not. Well, that's why reparations is fucked up. Hypothetically, if it ever happened in cash payouts, you're going to be giving a lot of people that are descendants of the benefactors of fucking slavery the money that should be going to the people that suffered slavery. But y'all don't give a fuck, man. You black and you proud. Similarly, the term black race shouldn't be used because it implies that black people are a distinct group or a race that can be objectively defined, the panel says. Racial definitions are problematic. Y'all believe in racial. This is y'all gospel. This is the Beatitudes to you. Race is the reason why you get up every morning, why you live, why you aspire to do any goddamn thing. Most of your fucking life hinges on this shit. What do you mean problematic? Why the experts are saying that? Why would they say that? It says race. Hey, that's funny you say that, Vernon, because we read a book where they was talking about a lot of these pro-black arguments against Jews, saying Jews are slave owners. Well, actually, if you look at the numbers, there were more African Americans that owned slaves than Jews. They outnumbered them. They owned more slaves than Jews ever did. In the colonial South. That's why niggas was fighting in the Civil War on the side of the Confederacy. Y'all don't even teach that shit. Y'all don't teach none of that, man. It's like the amount of shit that we had covered on this channel, I could stop right now, and y'all still ain't gonna be caught up. Y'all don't even teach that shit. Anyway, racial definitions are problematic because not only are they stigmatizing, they are historically wrong. Oh, y'all don't want to hear that shit. No, not y'all Jesus. Not my Jesus. Not my pastor. Y'all live by this code, man, that was given to y'all by rednecks, the people that was beating your fucking ancestors' heads in, hunting them down and killing them, man. Thank God for the Union Army stopping the goddamn KKK. Why? Because they had this belief of race. Race has always been a hierarchical system. Put white people on top of people that they deem as Caucasian, and blacks on the bottom. The slave race. How you know they slave? They black. They have no culture. They have no history. This is the shit they were saying. Shout out to the Parfait for putting that in his book, Hybrid Hate. See, I actually read these damn books. You niggas don't fucking read. That's why I don't entertain a lot of bullshit y'all be saying, because it's like, it's obvious that there's a dearth of knowledge, that you have not taken out the time to even study the fucking subject. Anyway, says Ambroise Wonkum, a medical geneticist at Johns Hopkins University and president of an African Society of Human Genetics. Race is often used as a proxy for genetic diversity. I hear this argument all the time. But race cannot be used to capture diversity at all. Race doesn't exist. Say it with me, y'all. Race doesn't exist. Race doesn't exist. You know, I find funny, you got people, these Afrocentrics and shit, that hate the Bible and shit. Abraham don't exist. Jesus didn't exist. All these arguments about people not existing. But you believe in race, which is a modern fucking myth. At least with the Bible, you can say, oh, that's ancient. That's an ancient myth, according to y'all. But y'all believe in a modern fucking myth. If you spent 5 minutes reading, you would understand and comprehend that shit is fake. It's a farce. It's a confabulation. And it says there's only one race, the human race. And I've said this before. If you really wanted to say race is biological, do you have to categorize everybody the same? And you don't. Because most of us have the same biological makeup any damn way. Oh, no, what makes me black? Okay, East Indians are black. Group yourself with them. You're not going to fucking do it. Because it's not biology, it's social. It's completely fucking social. They ain't got woolly hair. You got black Caucasians with woolly hair. And then you're going to get racist with that. They got to be slaves then. So slave mean black. Anytime you see blacks, it means slave. They can naturally fucking migrate there and create a pocket of society. And that's not a fucking option. They got to be fucking slaves. You sound just like your spiritual daddies. KKK, Blumenbach, all these racist motherfuckers. Darwin, all of them. Pick one. Woodrow Wilson, Fletcher Cox. I can go down the fucking list. Anyway, race might be used in some studies to determine how genetic and social factors contribute to health disparities. But beyond that, race has no real value in genetic research, Wonka asks. I know that hurts your feelings. Race has no real value in genetic research. It says here, and right here, race might be used in some studies to determine genetic and social factors contribute to health disparities, because when we're talking about disparities, there is an argument that it may be because you guys view people by their skin color or by these damn groups that you got in your fucking head, this imagination you got in your head. Oh, black people don't get anesthesia. Black women don't get anesthesia during pregnancy. And there are accounts of that because of the way you think of race. Oh, they beast, they can take more pain. Their pain threshold's higher. That all comes from that scientific racism. That all comes from the idea of, oh, this person's this way, so therefore all of them that way. That's where that comes from. That's why you have these disparities. That's why you have the eugenics program. That's how you have all this shit. You know, when Adolf Hitler wanted to subjugate and oppress Jews in Germany, in Nazi Germany, you know who he turned to? Because he was like, I don't know how to discriminate against these people properly. You know who he fucking learned from? He was like, shit, the United States of America been doing this shit for 100 years to the niggas. Let's implement the same shit they did to the niggas. And we implement that to the Jews. They a different race. Matter of fact, these Jews is Negroid. They Negroid parasites. That came out of fucking Adolf Hitler's mouth. He said that. Anyway. Researchers could use other identifiers, including geographical ancestry, to define groups of people in the study, Wonkum says, but those definitions need to be precise. For instance, some researchers group Africans by language groups, but a Bantu-speaking person in Tanzania or Nigeria, where malaria is endemic, would have a much higher genetic risk of sickle cell disease than a Bantu-speaking person whose ancestors are from South Africa, where malaria has not existed for at least 1,000 years. It says, but cause changes in genes that make hemoglobin can protect against malaria, but cause life-threatening sickle cell disease. Genetic studies also have to account for movements of people and mixture between multiple groups. And that's what y'all don't want to account for. And that's what we've been streaming on the fucking channel for years now. People move, people migrate, people don't stay in the same place, but it goes back to the idea of racial immutable races. They don't change. This is why Garfield would say, you niggas was there for 40,000 years. Even though the damn paper says it migrated 19,000 years ago. Like, you niggas will stick on this immutable race shit no matter what you see or what you fucking read. And y'all ignore that people migrate, people move. They don't stay stationary and static for thousands and thousands and thousands, 10,000s and 100,000s of years. They fucking move. That's the human experience. We all start in one place and then we spread out. And then people mix. Like I showed you the Balkans. These group of Africans moved to the Balkans in Europe and mixed with the locals. Jews moved from the Middle East and mixed with the locals of Europe. People move. You had that white British guy, took his DNA test, found out that he was like AM13. That's typically an African forager haplogroup, right? Or typically sub-Saharan African. But somewhere along the line, his ancestors migrated to Britain. Oh, no, that was slavery. If you read the damn article, it had nothing to do with slavery because they traced it by the surname. The surname was there before England even had a goddamn slave trade. But everything black, every time you see a black person anywhere, it's slavery. That comes from the idea of this race shit. Anyway, genetic studies also have to account for movements of people and mixture between multiple groups, Wonkum says. And labeling must be consistent with all groups in the study, he says. Current studies sometimes compare continent-wide racial groups such as Asian with national groups such as French or Finnish, and ethnic groups such as Hispanic. An argument for keeping race in rare cases. Removing race as a descriptor may be helpful for some groups, such as the people of African descent, says Joseph Iracheta, a health disparities researcher and executive director of the Native Biodata Consortium, headquartered on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation, South Dakota. That's a lot to say right there, right? I understand why they want to get rid of race science for themselves, because in their case, it has been used to deny them services, he says. But Native American story is different, says Iracheta, who was not part of the panel. Native Americans' unique evolutionary history have made them a valuable resource for genetics research. A small started population and many thousands of years of isolation from humans outside the Americas have given Native Americans and indigenous people in Polynesia and Australia some genetic features that may make it easier for researchers to find variants that contribute to health or disease, he says. We're the Rosetta Stone for the rest of the planet. Native Americans need to be protected because not only are our numbers small, but we keep having things taken away from us since 1492. We don't want this to be another casualty of colonialism. Removing the label of indigenous or Native American may erode tribal sovereignty and control over genetic data, he says. The panel does recommend that genetic researchers should clearly state why they use a particular descriptor and should involve study populations in making decisions about which labels to use. That community input is essential. Iracheta says the recommendations have no legal or regulatory weight, so he worries that this lack of teeth may allow researchers to ignore the wishes of study participants without fear of penalty. Now, I'm going to give very little pushback on this person here because I was discussing this with the guys the other day. African Americans can't accept that their haplogroup R. This is what I got to say about this. They can't accept that their ancestry goes back to Europe, whether it's maternal or paternal. Native Americans have the same issue, and it's this idea of this racial purity. It's just sickening. What do I mean by this? When they do take that DNA test, a lot of them do have European parentage, whether it's on the maternal or paternal side. Most of the times it's paternal, right? It's a sex bias, meaning back in those days in colonial times and onward, it was mostly men mixing with the local native indigenous women, not the other way around. And we see that in their genetic code. That shows the history of the admixture, shows the history of what parents they come from, what fathers they come from, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They have the same issue. What they said about Native Americans, that's a non-issue. Because Native Americans, you said people that were here before then. The problem comes in with genetic overlap, and what this person is probably afraid of, and why they made this claim, is because when you look at and examine these people that are saying they're Native Americans, some of them are just not. It's just that simple. Some of them are descendants of Europeans. It's just that simple. Anyway, that's another reason why people, just like in the African American or Israelite community, an Abo community, Afrocentric community, they try to, buck at genetics because it doesn't comport or agree with their narrative. Anyway, it says still seeking diversity of research participant. Genetic research has suffered from lack of diversity, blase. Y'all get the point. So from here, I'm going to play a video here. And I can give y'all those two articles. No, we do here, man. We source up. This ain't Garfield or Sonetta here. So that's the first article that I read to you guys. I give you the title here. Human geneticists curb the use of race in their papers. Oh, before we go to the video, I got two books, passages, real quick. Two passages, because I don't want to be on here long. I'm on a 60 to 70 hour week. I kind of want to get some rest. Doing stuff individually to help myself. That's why I was trying to tell y'all at the beginning. Don't go with this hive mind shit. I should be doing, my purpose in life is to my race. No, it's not. Make sure yourself is right. Make sure you get your shit in order, man. You can't have no goddamn community if you don't have individuals. You guys are silly. Then here's the second paper here, Science News. Here you go. He said, I really wish these niggas would start reading books. I know, right? So that's the second source. From there, let's go to I want to go to Muteza. I quote Muteza a lot. He's an for all the people that's we quote white people. Muteza is an African geneticist, a Sudanese geneticist. Even the Sudanese show genetic overlap because a lot of Sudanese have haplogroup J, which we know originates in the Caucasus. So, and they migrated down into Africa, estimated about 3,000 years ago. And their children, their descendants, look like other Sudanese. So again, you can't use racial categories to classify people biologically. You can't. Just does not mesh. All right. So with that being stated, let's go to let's go to this book here. So stop stream, share, window. All right. So this is from a book entitled Race, Are We So Different by Wiley Blackwell, Alan H. Goodman, and others. All right. You can see their pictures here. He following the white man. Alan H. Goodman, Yolanda T. Moses, and Joseph L. Jones, biological anthropologist. Because people, just because people have a certain skin color, a certain physical morphology, or you put them in some group, doesn't mean they don't understand science or they're not in the field of science. Because that's how y'all think. That's how y'all goddamn think. All right, so I want to go to. Of course, I'm not gonna read this whole damn thing to you, but that's a good point there. I had it saved here. I want to go to a certain segment here in inventing race segment. But I want to read this to you too because I just saw this. Race is a recent human invention. It's only a few hundred years old in comparison to the lengthy span of human history. Although not scientific, again, I gotta keep reiterating it. It's not scientific. The idea of race proposed that there were significant differences among people that allowed them to be grouped to a limited number of categories or races. Yet are we so different? All humans share a common ancestry because each of us represent a unique combination of ancestral traits. All humans exhibit biological variation. From the beginning, the idea of race was tied to power and hierarchy among people, with one group being viewed as superior and others as inferior. Despite disproving notions of hierarchy and removing social, economic, political barriers, the legacy of race continues to shape the lives and relationship of people in the U.S. and around the world. This book may challenge popular understandings about race questions, and spark critical thinking. We hope the exhibition, public website, and educational materials produced by the Race Project will foster dialogue in families and communities around the U.S. and help better relations among us all. And that's from the American Anthropological Association exhibit on race. Also, I want to read this too. This is so much in this book. I ain't gonna be here this long. I promise you. It says here the idea of race does not explain human variation. The biggest myth of race is that we humans have biological races, and that on a biological or more precisely a genetic level, our race determines a good deal about how we differ from one another and our potentialities. If you guys been listening, you know that's a fucking farce. That's fake. It's a confabulation. It says the science of human variation, however, tells us otherwise. That's why I said I brought up the Chadic people. I brought up the Balkans. Certain other Southern Europeans are the same way. Early Levantines, same thing. The Jews are a great example of this. Great example of this. Race as a genetic variation is a myth. Race neither explains variation nor is it useful genetic construct. In this book, we will use a number of interrelated examples to show why this is so. So anyway, let's go down. I want to go to this part right here. Histories of race and difference in racism. Race unnatural of an idea. The world got along without race for the overwhelming majority of its history. The U.S. has never been without it. And that's huge. That's deep, man. That's why a lot of you guys have it ingrained in your mind. Because from the time America was conceived, this was the belief. This was how people categorize groups. It says here, race, the unnatural history of an idea, a social contract, a cognitive smog, a dangerous myth, a powerful illusion. Race metaphors abound, and these examples express all, as well as the reality of race in contemporary society in the U.S. and globally. Race today is everywhere. Whatever confusion and disagreements exist around its definitions or delineations, few would argue this point. And that's another thing. People say race is real. Yes, it's real because people are using it. That's why it's real. It's not tangible. It's not something we can show in biology. It is something that's being employed and utilized in today's society. That's what makes it real. But it's a confabulation. It is a myth because race is not an immutable thing. It's not something that says these group of people are all the same, which is how it was utilized famously in the past. And how you guys use it now? It says here, oh my God, it switched users on me. Why didn't you go back? Anyway, it says here, race today is everywhere. Whatever confusion and disagreements exist around its definitions of delineation, few would argue this point, and understandably so. We live in a society saturated with race. Racial thinking has infiltrated and now influences in some way or another everyone's experience of health, education, romance, friendship, work, religion, politics. Virtually every arena and aspect of our lives, these influences can be painfully obvious or virtually imperceptible, but they are ever present. As a result, over time, most of us develop strong held racial beliefs based on these accumulated experiences and steady stream of images and other forms of information that reinforce our confidence in our ability to believe what we think we see in race. Eventually, we become race experts, or at least experts on how we see and experience the races, their physical characteristics, their behaviors, especially their inherent or essential differences. We debate the nature and extent of contemporary racism among family and friends and online forums. And even though intermittent national conversations, usually prompted by current events and plagued by predicted sound bites, occasionally the shared experiences and beliefs of others may cause us to revisit and rethink our own ideas. Yet rarely do these exchanges reveal or probe the powerful cultural underpinnings of our collective commitments to race and racism. Think about it. How often do second glances required to guess someone's proper race lead us to second guess the premise of race as biology or the notion of racial phenotypes, or to question our desire to race them in the first place? We are much likely to puzzle over such individuals' nonconformity to racial criteria that were disproven long ago, and that's what boggles my mind. Y'all got to question people not conforming to the idea of race and not the concept of race itself. But people going, wait a minute. How is race a legitimate biological thing or unit if these group of people that you all cluster together are not the same? Nah, man, you black. I don't give a damn what you say. You fucking black. That's the response. Questioning the person for not conforming instead of questioning a damn erroneous concept that was, like the book says, disproven years ago. It says here, those of us still counting may quibble over whether humanity divides into 3, 4, 5, or more races. However, few take the logical leap of allowing this apparently minor detail to challenge our belief in race as a way of defining, categorizing, and inevitably ranking human differences. Taking this step can prove challenging even for those of us who struggle to avoid the racial contract and reject notions of racial supremacy, and failing to engage in such basic questions and issues, or in doing so only superficially, we undermine our ability to understand race and unlearn racism. Coming to terms with our varied and shared histories of race and racism is a good starting point for those who would reverse this trend. There is more at stake in our collective ability or failure to face our racial past squarely than the repetition of past mistakes or misdeeds. And that's why I keep harping on this channel. Why are we doing the same thing over and over again in the same video I've said earlier in the live? We're actually repeating the same shit that these people said about us 100, 200 years ago, and reinforcing it and standing on it. Just standing on it like, nah, man, yeah, we this, we that. Black mean you a slave, man. You came from, that's what black mean. It says here, because these are living histories. They live with us, with and within us, and they keep us from moving forward together as equals. Y'all don't want to have that conversation. I know ain't no black Hebrew Israelite gonna want to have that conversation. But that's what's y'all gonna see in the video that I'm about to play here in a minute. That's what y'all hinging on to. That person white, he my enemy. That person black, they're my enemy. You understand? The damn racist ass white people on the internet, they don't like DNA results because the DNA results don't comport with their idea of white supremacy. Oh, what do you mean niggas was over here? Yeah, niggas was over there. They migrate. They have sex. They're humans. They mix. They interbreed. They learn cultures. They adopt cultures. They drop cultures. They lose cultures. They war. They do everything. They're humans. That's another concept of race. Race dehumanizes people, man. Like, god damn, dude. I go all night on this shit. But y'all embrace this shit. It says here, um, we read that right there. It says they live within us, and they keep us from moving forward together as equals. At times, historic episodes of race and racism resurface quite literally to reshape both past and present. This was the case in the early 1990s when construction workers rediscovered Lower Manhattan's 17th and 18th century New York African burial ground. The subsequent unearthing of artifacts and skeletal remains of over 400 individuals from this early African American cemetery helped to spur broad interest in the underexplored and underappreciated history of Northern slavery. More often, our racial legacies persist in classrooms, workplaces, banks, courtrooms, and a host of other institutional spaces. Facebook, should have put Facebook on there and YouTube, where life chances and material realities are significantly enhanced or diminished. In such settings, the seemingly impersonal nature of procedures and interactions may easily conceal underlying race-infused assumptions, biases, and power relations, especially through the enactment of race-neutral and colorblind policies. These routine interactions can evoke and reinforce racial stereotypes and power relations in subtle but potent ways. We embody it. Also, real quick, just to give an example of affirmative action. Affirmative action, it pretty much, a lot of people have problems with it, some people don't. But it does reinforce the idea that if you black on an educational level, you're inferior, you can't keep up with other groups. So therefore we have to force you or shoehorn you into a school or a program because you couldn't get there naturally. You couldn't do it on your own merit. And that does reinforce racial stereotypes. There's a plethora of other examples just, flashing in my mind right now. We're going to continue reading. It says, we embody our racial past most profoundly through contemporary identity formations and classifications and associated health, wealth, and educational opportunity disparities, as discussed in part 3 of this book. Thus, while some today are eager to declare the United States as a post-racial society, this refrain rings untrue and problematic for many, especially those targeted by and dedicated to eradicating racism. Indeed, perhaps for better and for worse, most find it difficult to imagine a time before race or to envision life without it. Instead, we tend to extrapolate from its current pervasiveness and power in institutions, popular culture, language, and so on, that race has always been and always will be with us. Race, it appears, as an inevitable part of our own past and destiny. Is this truly the case? Just how deep into human history do roots of race run? A recent human invention. As the epigraph suggests, and as impossible as it is now seems, there was a time before race colored perceptions of human diversity. In fact, most anthropologists, historians, and others who study and compare cultural and societal systems agree that time was not so long ago. They do not recognize race among humans as a product of biological evolution or divine design. Instead, scholars have produced a vast and growing literature that documents race as a social, historical, cultural construct, a system of ideas, identities, and material relations that emerge slowly in the context of Western. I want y'all to hear this part right here. Because you got people that, claim to be so proud of being black and African and all this other stuff. They don't follow white people, and these systems are racist and crooked. Why haven't y'all let this shit go? Because this is where it comes from. It says that emerged slowly in the context of Western European imperialism and colonial expansion beginning in the 15th century. This is the origin of race. This is the origin of it. But y'all, Dr. Umar Johnson and all this shit. You Dr. Umar Johnson and you pro-black and you all this other shit. You sign out of TV and all that. But when it come down to it, you hold on to a racist colonial belief system known as race. It says, in contrast to the popular belief in race as an empirically validated, innate, and defining human quality, that's what some of y'all believe. It says they point out that the first laws designed to establish and patrol racial boundaries and hierarchy did not appear until the middle of the 17th century, when the racial worldview was a new thing under the sun. From this perspective, human races are not biological units. Although reference through presumably shared physical and increasingly cultural attributes, races are in fact political entities resulting from our social actions. And I don't know why I have to read a book and show sources on this. This should be fucking known. Like everybody that's watching right now, this should be known fucking knowledge. Like this is not hidden stuff. You ain't got to join the Illuminati. You ain't got to sacrifice nobody to learn this shit. This should be known. So what's really going on, man? Y'all choosing to be ignorant. Y'all choose willfully ignorant. For you Bible believers in the chat. Races are in fact political entities resulting from our social actions. We concur. The information in the chapters and sections that follow clearly support this view of race as a recent human invention. Current scholarship suggests that human races exist solely because we created them, and only in forms in which we perpetuate them. And that's it. That's why race is real, because you continue to embrace it, continue to teach it. If society says tomorrow, we're no longer going to go about race, we're no longer going to put in your application, are you black, white, and all this other bullshit. We're not going to do none of that. We're no longer going to stigmatize people based on their skin color or based on their racial group. It would die because it only exists socially. It does not exist biologically. It doesn't. It says here, furthermore, echoing historian Barbara Fields, we emphasize that recognizing race and racism as a social cultural rather than biological facts is the only tip of the analytical iceberg. What academics call the constructivist approach affords a perspective from which to investigate critically the ideological and material manifestations, connections, and consequences of race and racism-related phenomena. Simply put, this approach represents the means, not an end, to understanding race. Thus, it is not our intention simply to convince the reader that human races are social cultural constructs. Rather, our goal in the first part of the book is to show precisely how and why race, like class, gender, and other axes of oppression, race is called an axe of oppression, and you niggas embrace it. All right. It says here, came to be and continues to be such a durable and dynamic stratifying element in U.S. society and culture. As the title of this part implies, the difficult history of race in this country is in actuality a set of stories of interwoven narratives illustrating how forces of tradition, religion, law, and science conspired and at times competed to define and influence human diversity. For example, through miscegenation laws, and we all talked about this before, those ideas was Plecker and all that. They believed that you couldn't mix a black and a white person, and they hated mulattoes, which were a result of a black and a white person, or a black and an Indian, or think of any other group. And guess who supported that? Marcus fucking Garvey. He hated mulattoes too. We've read that source on the channel before. If you don't know, do your background check. Marcus Garvey was in bed with white supremacists. It says, realizing its unnatural political origins and ongoing development as a product of human activity is a vital first step towards a comprehensive understanding of race, what it has been, what it is today, and what we might make of it in the years to come. In this book, we chart our journey through the historical origins and evolution of the very idea of human races. First, however, a brief excursion into the time before race is in order. Surely the claim that race enters the scene so late in human history, perhaps just several hundred years ago, leaves wide open the question of how earlier people process human differences. So from there, I'm just going to go straight here straight to this point here real quick for the sake of time. I don't want to be on here all night, but y'all can also purchase this book yourself, study it yourself, and in future videos, future projects, I will be touching on these passages in the near future. But I want to read this here. Oh man, I gotta miss this. Let me read this real quick. It says here, North's ancient history, white race history. Not surprisingly, the argument against race and racism as fixed of ancient elements of human relations permeates the writings of W.B. Du Bois, Anna Julia Cooper, and St. Clair Drake, and others who sought to defend and vindicate African Americans, others against claims of their inherent and immutable inferiority. Again, that also came with race. We touched on that earlier. It says their careful historical and anthropological treatment of the race concept and related phenomena of skin color prejudice and sexism helped form the intellectual basis for current constructivist interpretation. As noted earlier, however, one need not visit antiquity to appreciate the time when a correctable culture trumped intraceable race as the accident of birth in the view of those with the power to decide such things. From the 18th through the early 20th centuries, for example, white Americans were fascinated with the idea of civilizing and elevating Native Americans by wiping out indigenous cultural practices. All right, we're going to go here. I wanted to bring this out. Smedley describes how all of this changed when wealthy landowners, what does it talk about changing? It says here in chapter 3, Creating Race, we reconstruct the unique social and economic circumstances that gave rise to the beginning of race, as we know it in colonial North America. In an essay on the origins of racial ideology, Smedley observes that the advent of race was not an automatic process upon the arrival of Europeans and Africans to American shores. Rather, what we typically find in the early colonies are distinctive medleys of old and new world ethnicities fighting, loving, and living together without resort to race or racism. Differences of religion, Christian versus heathens, and nationality initially weighed more heavily on the minds of the first colonists than did those of skin color. Smedley, here's the point. I hope y'all ain't went to sleep yet. I know how y'all niggas are. Smedley describes how all of this changed when wealthy landowners created race. I want y'all to hear this. For all you lovers of racial classifications and trying to find some damn way to validate it, I want you to hear this. You pro-blackers. I'm so pro-black. I'm so pro my people. Smedley describes how all of this changed when wealthy landowners created race in order to justify chattel slavery, the claiming of indigenous people's land, and the promotion of divisions among an increasingly rebellious class of Native American, European, and African laborers. That's what you believe in. This is what you put your faith in. Right? It gets no more cringe than that. Right. You know, Marcus Garvey was anti-mulatto with a European fucking haplogroup. He literally descends from Europeans. Let's go to Mutez's work, Genetics of African Population. It won't be too long here. Then we're going to go to the video and we're going to close. All right. So this is page 3 of Mutez's Genetics of African Populations. And let's start here on the blackness and notions of Africa. It says the stereotypical notion of African in recent times in the phenotypical terms is usually linked to the trait of dark skin color, specifically that of being black, maybe beginning at dark brown. In fact, black African, the problematic common phrase of use, is often, if not always, made synonymous with African in certain literature. Black and African are often incorrectly used interchangeably. That's what I was bringing up earlier. When you look at Africa, and that's why I know you guys ain't Pan-African, because all of Africa cannot be fit into this fake category known as black. It can't be. Because if you're talking about from a phenotype, North Africans, Maghribis, and others, they're not phenotypically black. And then here's the thing, the genetic overlap. You have Bagara Arabs that live in Nigeria, and they look like other Nigerians. Again, exposing the idiocy of race. It says here, in fact, Black African, a problematic common phrase of use, is often not always made synonymous with African. In certain literature, Black and African are often incorrectly used interchangeably, with African having a particular cultural content thought of as being indigenous in connection to a conception that makes those so identified part of the entity that was conceived to be isolated from the rest of the world. Beautifully put, because that's how y'all look at Africans. That's why they get mad, because they find out all this E1B1B in modern Chinese populations in the modern paper right now. They find an E1B1A and shit. You got white nationalists mad at that because no, nigga, y'all stuck. Africa is not a continent, it's a prison. You're only supposed to be there, nowhere else. What do you mean you're in the Balkans? What do you mean you're in Southern Europe? What do you mean you're in China? What do you mean you're in Bahrain? It says here, African in this case would seem to be used to connote living peoples with a particular phenotype whose bodies collectively are the repositories of a particular genome. This notion of blackness derives from the received race concept and its taxonomic schema modulated through traditions of stereotypes. This is what we're getting. You're not getting it from the field of genomics. You're not getting it from autosomes. You're not getting it from Y-DNA or mtDNA. You're getting it from these stereotypes. You're getting it from this old racist teaching. That's where you're getting it from. The irony here, of course, is that the region that encompasses so-called Black Africa is the same place that contributed heavily to the emergence of our species, which was likely assembled with ancestries from Supra-Saharan, Saharan, Eastern, and Southern Infra-Saharan regions. And that is the irony, because you pseudos out there will try to act as if science is validating this bullshit. But when you look at it, all diversity would come from these groups or these peoples or these areas, right? At the onset, according to the scientific literature. Black has been and is used in other Western discourses as referent to various non-African peoples, specifically certain of those in the specific regions in Asia. It has its own subjectivity. How dark must skin how dark must skin be to be called Black? It is different in different places. Australian Aborigines, Dravidian Indians, New Guineans, and Melanesians, who are also dark or black in color, were all called Black in the context of colonialism. This is why I tell y'all people, why y'all don't say, oh, we all Black. Why y'all don't say that? No, he ain't black. No, what the fuck does that mean? It says Black has sometimes been used to mean simply non-European and non-Far East Asian and British context. Professor Leila Ahmed, a light-skinned Egyptian, noted being called Black when she was a student in England in the 1960s. A practice now discontinued due to a refinement of social taxonomies in England, or maybe the objection of some groups who used to be called Black. It is well to note that in ancient northern Africa, the African and Roman times, there was a variation in the phenotype of the people. This was also true of the northern Nile Valley. And we covered this on the show before. Many of these Egyptians were, some were white, pale, some were black. They had every variation. For the people that's trying to make it all black or all white, that was a variegated look in Egypt. It says here, in the early Islamic period, there are some interesting ironies related to the notion of blackness. Ubadah ibn Samit, the appointed envoy of Amir, commander of the Islamic or Arab forces that entered Egypt, was initially rejected by the Roman prelate, apparently because he was Black. The Arabs of that era told the prelate that they held blacks and whites in equal respect and that Ubadah was one of the best among them. Ubadah informs the prelate, there are 1,000 blacks as black as myself among our companions. I and they will be ready each to meet and fight 100 enemies together. We live only to fight for God, to follow his will. We care not for wealth so long as we have wherewithal to stay our hunger and clothe our bodies. This world is not to us. The next world is all. Close quote. This passage indicates Ubadah feels himself to be part of this community. In this era Islamic scholars consider it to be Islam's golden age and one of equality, an equality that would later change with various developments, including some level of bias against the darker skin colors in some regions, as well as other biases. Of course, black and white are relative terms and socially modulated. Camel Camille documents numerous blacks who were part of the early Islamic community and even regarded as heroes. Some apparently buried by the Prophet Muhammad with his own hands. And there were the black pre-Islamic notables like Antar and later Islamic figures like Al-Jahiz who have down through history been called black or some equivalent. These cannot be overlooked. Statistically, the numbers of those who became notable remembered is suggestive that there was an even larger population. How many of these Arabian blacks and their families moved into super-Saharan and now Valley Africa is unknown. It's important to say that they were not slaves. And we have to say that because, again, the origins of race, the teachers of race, right? The ideologues of race have it ingrained in your head that every time you see someone a certain skin color or description or descriptor, it automatically means slave. Oh, black, he's a slave. That's why he put in the book. It's important to say that they were not slaves. But that's the first thing you're going to jump to because y'all ain't nothing but KKK rednecks. It says here, what were the geographical origins of Ubadah and his other black companions and or their ancestors? Was there an indigenous black population in early Arabia but Asian in origin, like the Dravidians, or a population that straddled Eastern Africa and Arabia? Quite possible, or early Holocene, prehistoric migrants that participated in the building of the primitive Arabian population. Were they the descendants of Eastern African converts who returned to Arabia with the early Ummah that had been sent to Ethiopia by the Prophet for safety in the earliest days of Islam? Or are they descendants of those of other known Eastern African slaves or migrants residents in Asia, or solely historic slave descendants, a favorite trope of some researchers, or some composite of these? The example of Ubadah and others in early Arabia negates a notion of blackness equaling Africa in the way that this is often simplistically done. And this is what I be telling y'all. This is the problems with race. This is why it's problematic. See a black person, Africa. See a black person, they're all the same, immutable. They don't change. You can't say that. Because again, these people have different, this is all it boils down to, diversity. People are diverse no matter how they fucking look or what culture they belong in or what language they speak. They're diverse. That's all it boils down to. This is not hard. This is very simple. This is why race withers around the edges. This is why. Anyway, the example of Ubadah and others in early Arabia negates a notion of blackness equaling Africa in a way that this is often simplistically done. Yet this view lingers across disciplines and popular discourse. Of course, it would be of interest to understand how a notion of ethnicity fits into this early history. It is also of interest to understand how and when anti-black prejudice emerged in the Arabo Islamic world, breaking from the early egalitarian tradition, given that some Arabs sometimes called themselves black, at least in comparison to northern peoples. Such prejudice was not apparently developed in the same way or degree that occurred in the West, had no effect on some Arab groups as they migrated into tropical areas of Africa, with men marrying local women or taking them as concubines. Again, side note, this is what I mentioned about the Baggara Arabs in Nigeria. They did their DNA. They do actually descend from Arabs or Middle Eastern people. It says in other cases, whole groups merge with indigenous populations. It is beyond the scope of this chapter to explore this issue further, but it's clear that received notions of race, I want y'all to hear this, if y'all ain't getting nothing else, it is clear that received notions of race and racial schema are highly problematic. Not just problematic, highly problematic. It is important to say that all endogenous African populations are not homogenous in appearance. That's another thing. The Islamic period is often presented as having absolutely changed the northern region, somehow making that history not part of the African world. That goes back to people like Dr. Reggie saying, oh, these are Arab invaders. Or totally changing its people. Some view the migration that occurred as a simple massive set of colonialism Arabs, or those composing the early Islamic migrants. The reality is far more complex than this. And as we covered on the show before, it is very more complex than this. But a lot of these people that are in North Africa are indigenous and autochthonous to North Africa. They've always been there, like the Amazigh. How do we know this? Because the bodies, the bones, the remains that have been tested match their DNA. Anyway, racial typological thinking, and then we'll move on to the video. The stereotypical idea about Africans in Africa as a conceptualized and racial thinking in the received racial schema has had its influence on the interpretation of morphological molecular data. This has come from a model of racial typological thinking applied to human populations in general. Races were conceptualized as foundational and fundamental units and conceived as being not only represented but defined by an idealized narrow set of physical characteristics, otherwise called a type. A type as a concept could also be based on gene frequencies or specific lineages. Variation from the type was interpreted to be evidence of admixture or an aberration. In this way of thinking, name implies very discrete groups of individuals which are different in kind, and is seen as being only distantly connected, and sometimes in the 19th century as being of different species. As we covered on the channel before, you had people called polygynous. They had people thinking that, no, we don't all share the same mother and father. There's some humans that are different species. This was being taught. And some of you Black Hebrew Israelites believe that, even though science has disproved, genetics has disproved that. It says, even when the larger racial schema are not used, there seems to be a tendency to think that in terms of the street population consisting of uniform individuals. Y'all believe that all Black people are the same. That's what y'all believe. That's why y'all had the hive mind shit, which were sometimes described as types, such as Nordic or Alpine. In real breeding populations, however, there's variation at the molecular and other levels, although perhaps restricted phenotypically to the eye, and types are abstractions, although extreme variance may be real if not actually representative. Traits or traits complexes were conceptualized as having necessarily a single origin. In fact, individuals and populations may have multiple genealogical connections to other populations, even if they are not very genetically similar overall. This goes to people that look at autosomes. Oh, how am I related to Richard III of England or wherever he's from, right? Oh, how am I related to these people if my autosomes is not the same? That don't mean shit. I'm majority African, brother. He majority European. How we relate? You share a common male ancestor if you got his fucking haplogroup. You G2A, he G2A. It's that simple. The only way you can get that haplogroup, that genetic signature, is through the Y chromosome. That's the only way. And that Y chromosome is carried on sperm. So that means if you go back far enough, probably 2,000-3,000 years, your ancestry converts to one male. Oh, shit. Did y'all hear that? Because I accidentally hit my mute on my mic. Anyway, what I was saying was your ancestries would converge to one male that would basically trace back to that. What's going on, brother? Anyway. Let's go back to the source. Again, it says, even if they are not very genetically similar overall, some of these may be ancient, reflecting a deep time relationship due to shared ancestry or ancient gene flow. Others may be more recent due to recent gene flow. Assumptions that generalize to regions from one or two populations or individuals, as in some discussions of gene flow, are merely versions of racial thinking. The use of samples from single populations like Yoruba to represent the African or even infra-Saharan African or tropical African is not defensible on theoretical grounds because it ignores the heterogeneity of Africa. It is congruent with the notions of the Negro type only as African. That this idea persists in various works reflects something about the sociology of knowledge, not a critical evolutionary science. The results of analysis of groups intended to portray population history or historical processes are often expressed in dendrograms or plots, which are acceptable as long as their limitations are understood and disclosed. The results expressed are intrinsically attractive, but are incomplete without a discussion of process and interaction. The source of similarity, including microconvergence or parallelism, and the problems of assuming that all data are equally good for making comparisons. Misleading results could occur if various kinds of data are not critically handled. Care has to be taken when describing and interpreting patterns of culture, biology, and language. Attaching genes to current speakers of language families in an obligatory manner under the assumption that in early history, the speakers of the ancestral language family were the sole ancestors of those currently speaking the descendants of the language is problematic and wrong. Attempting to classify language based on genetics of the current speakers is in principle wrong. And a lot of people do this as well, and this falls back on race. And black people speak, no, you can't tell if someone descends from a group solely by how or what language they speak. Again, we speak English. That does not tell you what my ancestors spoke. It does not mean that my ancestors are the originators of the English language. It does not mean that. It just means that I live in a society where the dominant language is English, and that's what I grew up speaking. That's it. You can't extrapolate anything else from it. It says the splits within a language phylum are not causative of biological population splits based on mutations or natural selection and vice versa, although they may sometimes track with each other in some specific circumstances if geographical spaces is involved, but social customs and endogamy can be isolated as well. Early population history can not be assumed to be a story of entities with obligatory linked genes, languages, and cultures. Even strictly in terms of biology, population history is not simply gene history or vice versa. And this is why you can't just simply say that people are immutable. You're the way you are because of your ancestors. That makes no fucking sense. Gang banging is not tribal warfare. And the reason why people gang bang is because, the Yoruba and the Igbo don't like each other. And the East Sun, shut up. That has nothing to do with anything. You can't inherit that genetically. People gang bang because we live in a subculture. That's why. African Americans live in the inner cities. There's poverty. Usually, Martin Luther King said it the best: poverty and crime are sisters, are cousins. It's just that simple, man. It's cultural. It's not fucking genetics. Anyway, I guess selling dope and selling crack is genetics now. Shut up. Anyway, it says here, this is an area where critical scholarship is very important. There's also the issue of the context of interpretation of data. When should a given discipline lead the narrative? Does one look at genetics first to interpret a cultural or historical pattern? Or does one look at chronologies or patterns determined by archaeology, history, or language and use genetics within? Scale and time depth are important to this issue, as well as the kind of narrative that is of interest. It cannot be said enough that gene history is not population history, and population history is not to be equated with social, political, or cultural history. Furthermore, how and why genes flow across space and populations cannot be answered by genes themselves. The factors that spur migration are gene independent. The social interactions that permit gene flow are not a property of genes themselves. How we use genetics in developing a narrative of a specific people or kingdom is an important open question, and not a question at all for some scholars. For example, can genetics genomics teach us anything about the Fun's history, as opposed to their ancestral identity in a narrow, particular kind of way? And would the genetics give us the appropriate time depth to speak of the funds as funds specifically, as opposed to elements in their ancestry? This question about ranking data deserves ongoing critical examination. A naive empiricism will not work. The errors of affirming the consequent and misplaced concreteness are to be avoided. Another notion that influences how Africa is or has been conceptualized has had to do with the stereotypes and perceptions of social organization. Africa, specifically tropical Africa, in keeping with the stereotypical use, has been and is conceptualized as a place with numerous isolated peoples and our tribes, where individuals have putative common ancestors with a primordial origin. And this is how you guys think. Everybody from the same area, they got to be all the same people, same ancestry, same everything. They speak the same. They do the same things, the same mannerisms, which makes no sense because we all know Africa is one of the most is the most diverse continent on the planet. Not one of the most, is the most diverse. So not everybody has the same ancestors. Again, you have Europeans, you have people that come from Sardinia, you have people that come from East Africa, West Africa, North Africa, South Africa. You have Asian groups. You have all type of groups in Africa. It says the idea of closed and isolated groups, in essence, bounded biocultural entities, has often been implicitly employed in much work. This will be further discussed later. These ideas form a backdrop and implicit mental template to the way Africa is thought about, even when not explicitly stated. For example, published work on the genetic history of Africans often does not generally include the whole continent or examine the interconnections of all of its regions, even though it's generally agreed that modern humans arose in Africa. It's not always clear what the concept of genetic history encompasses. All right, so with that, I'm going to stop with the Muntasia. By now, if somebody that's not half brain dead should understand that race is fictive, it's false, it's fake, it has no biological unit. It has none of that. It's completely social. All this stuff is social. If you stop believing in it, it'll die tomorrow. My DNA will remain. The fact that I'm EU290 will remain. The fact that I have an L haplogroup as my maternal DNA will remain. Anyway, I'm getting ready to get out of here. But before we get out of here and conclude, what I want to do is share with you a video. All right, but before we do that, fair use. We are covered under Section 107 of the Fair Use Act, which means we're allowed to cover material. I will be giving my criticism and commentary, and we'll be doing this for teaching purposes. So we are covered under Code 107 of the Fair Use Act. Anyway. So we're going to go to a video entitled Why Biological Race Isn't Real.
Yesterday morning, a 19-year-old white man was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole for murdering 10 black people at a top supermarket in Buffalo, New York. When the mass murder happened in May of 2022, it rocked the nation as it became painfully obvious that the shooter's motivations were driven by racism and hatred of the black community. In the days following the shooting, a 180-page, mostly plagiarized screed was discovered that documented the terrorist's thoughts and motivations. Among these were the usual neo-Nazi and white supremacist talking points that have become mainstays on the despicable places of the internet that still house these brain-dead, soggy slices of Wonder Bread. But what caught many in my community, the scientific community, off guard was the appearance of several figures that had been plucked from population genetics literature. Shown here is a list of memes compiled by a New York Times columnist in 2018 that resembled those used by the terrorist. Each of these are meant to show that there exists a real biological barrier between the races, that race, which has been recognized as a social and cultural construct, but not a biological one for over 40 years, is an actual biological thing. To begin addressing these pseudoscientific claims, we should start with an important distinction of terms. There exist two distinct conceptions of race. First is the cultural and societal conception. It is the version of race you're given at birth by your community and the society you grow up in. It's about identity and shared experiences and is not necessarily related to anything biological such as ancestry. I want to stress here that the cultural conception of race and identity is very real, that social constructions of race have led to very different experiences that are not shared between the races. I, as a white male, have experienced America in a very different way than a black male. To say that this difference doesn't exist is to erase this important historical and cultural designation. This video is specifically addressing claims related to a scientific definition of race, that is, one that is devoid of culture or historical meaning and seeks actual biological distinctions. This is often called race realism, or race science, or aptly scientific racism. Proponents of this view see race as a discrete group, and that these groups have real differences, such as in intelligence or morality. They view things like interracial marriages as polluting the gene pool, dragging down what they see as a pure and superior race, i.e., the
Yeah, you niggas is guilty. Black Hebrew Israelites is guilty. Afrocentric Umar Johnson, I was smacking your fucking face, boy. This nigga was saying all type of foul shit. It's so crazy. Like, this is where y'all getting it from, man. The concept of race. Y'all don't want to accept that race is just societal. It's cultural, like you said. It had nothing to do with your genes. It had nothing to do with how your biological makeup is constructed. It has nothing to do with that. This is how y'all do, bro. This is where y'all getting it from. Again, you guys are the spiritual children of Woodrow Wilson. I keep saying it over and over again. All those Dixiecrats of the past lived through you. All right?
white, typically Nordic race. This was the view of the terrorist who murdered 10 black people in Buffalo, and it has been the view of eugenicists, Nazis, and other racist bumpkins for hundreds of years. Thus, in this video, we're going to ask the question, is there any evidence at all for a scientific, culture-free definition of race? Race is not a concept used in biology anymore, but it once meant something akin to subspecies or subpopulations, generally geographic variants of a species. This is what Darwin meant in the subtitle to his famous Origin of Species, which was the preservation of favored races and the struggle for life. And this definition, all races are monophyletic, that is, they share a single, most recent common ancestor. This is depicted here, where each color represents a different race, which, with the colored branches at the base of each tip being individuals sampled from within that race. Under this definition, all individuals under a designated race should be more related to one another than they are to any other race. So, how does this definition fare? This concept of race has been debunked by every genetic sequencing effort since the 1970s. For over 40 years, we've known that there are no monophyletic groupings of humans. Shown in this figure from Fu et al. 2013, we see a data set of people classified by continent and designated by colors, along with a corresponding phylogeny of each individual. As you can see, individuals from Africa are found all across the tree, meaning there are individuals living in Africa that are more related to Europeans than they are to other Africans. We see the same pattern among...
This is why I say I should slap some of you niggas in the fucking... I've been saying this. I'm walking away from the fuck. Listen, you can't group people based on these ideas of race. You can't. Just like I've been saying, the nigga just said this shit. You got groups in Africa that are more close to Europeans than they are other Africans. You know what that's called? Diversity, bitch. Diversity. Let's keep going, man. I'm getting pissed. You niggas is smoking crack or something, man. Let me rewind that so he can define that.
People classified by continent and designated by colors, along with a corresponding phylogeny of each individual. As you can see, individuals from Africa are found all across the tree, meaning there are individuals living in Africa that are more related to Europeans than they are to other Africans. We see the same pattern among Asians and Europeans, where there are European individuals more related to some Asian populations than they are to other Europeans. This is not at all what you would expect under the definition of race given on the previous slide. If this had been a data set of any other organism, we would conclude that there are no geographic structuring present and that there are only one evolutionary lineage. Okay, so that definition doesn't work. What about a more nuanced one related to shared patterns of genetic variation? In this definition, which doesn't rely on monophily, races are distinct groups in which most of the alleles they have are private, i.e. they aren't shared with other races. Thus, the amount of diversity within each race is low relative to the amount of divergence between races. This is represented here by the different boxes, where the largest box represents the racial group, and the thin boxes represent shared variation across groups. The pi within is how much divergence there is within the race, whereas pi between is how much divergence there is between two races. Under this definition, pi between must always be greater than pi within. Here's a figure summarizing this view from this important article by Obasogi in 2009. Panel A is meant to show what they call an essentialist view of race, and that there's some ideal racial form and everything around that is just variation on the theme, with very limited overlap between races. The B panel dispenses with the essentialist view, but still maintains that most of the variation is private, with some shared across. The C panel is the actual pattern of variation. All of the variation that exists within Asian and European populations emerge from the background of pre-existing African variation, and thus the majority of the variation is shared across the world.
I know y'all probably turned your fucking computer off when you heard that part. Because y'all believe in A, the essentialist concept of race. B is still bullshit, but it allows for some overlap, right? He just explained it. But C is what we actually examine in the human genome. You see a lot of fucking overlap between these groups. That's why your racial concepts do not work. There is no biological race. There isn't.
This makes sense if we understand the out of Africa theory, which posits that all humans originated in Africa and then colonized the rest of the world. This is from the 1000 Genomes Consortium results in 2014, showing the same thing. Each pie chart represents patterns of shared variation. Dark gray is variation shared across the whole world. Light gray is shared across multiple continents. Light color is shared within the continent across multiple populations. And dark color is private to the population. As you can see, the exact opposite pattern is apparent than what this second definition of race predicts. Most of the variance is shared across the whole world, not private to populations or even continents. Indeed, in all cases, greater than 50% of the variation is shared in more than one continent. I can, of course, already hear the pathetic moans of the neo-Nazi apologists desperately gesturing to plots like this one to rescue their heinous ideology from the dustbin of history where it belongs. So let's spend just a moment talking about plots like these, what they are, how they're generated, and what the true nature of human genetic variation looks like. So first, these plots are commonly called structure plots, after the program structure that is used to construct them. Each line is an individual, and the colors represent the pre-specified population that individuals were assigned to. The program doesn't know how many populations there are. You assign the number, and it finds patterns of genetic clustering within the data to assign individuals to these populations. So one interpretation of this plot is that there are roughly 6 discrete populations with one highly admixed one, corresponding to the Middle East, which has a high probability of showing ancestry from multiple populations. Now, let's talk about why this figure, and ones like it, can be deceptive. First is the nature of the population assignment based on continent. In this way, we are forcing what may be continuous data into discrete units and then employing a model that assumes the underlying data is discrete to estimate which discrete.
That's exactly what we read in Mutez's work. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? He was bringing out that same thing of basically when they make these plots, trying to make it discrete, trying to show that no, that's not the case. He just showed you that Africans, you got some Africans that are more close to Europeans than they are other Africans. You know, that's across the board. So anyway,
Units it belongs to. Second, in this study and many others, there are relatively few African individuals included, which obscure just how much diversity there is in Africa relative to the rest of the world. So to understand the first point, imagine a hypothetical landscape of genetic variation characterized by the bottom panel. We can see that transitions from blue to red to green occur very smoothly with no discrete breaks. Clearly, there's no arbitrary population assignment that could capture this variation. And yet, that's what structure plots are doing. In effect, they're taking the true variation and simplifying it as shown in the panel with the blue, red, and green squares. With only those three, the population looks highly distinct, despite the underlying variation being truly continuous. Here's a study that treated human genetic variation as continuous, but colored each individual by population and continent comparison. The x-axis is geographic distance, and the y-axis is pairwise FST, which is a measure of genetic differentiation between individuals. What emerges is a clear continuous pattern with no discrete breaks, and that the best predictor of relatedness is purely geographic distance, not continent, population, or any definition of race. A recent study drove this home by comparing continuous patterns of differentiation across individuals labeled by continent, which are the colored dots, versus a database that is just a sample of people from New York City, the gray dots. By solely focusing on continental variation, we miss the true pattern of human genetic variation that connects all continents. Indeed, it does so in individuals from a single city. As to the second issue, undersampling Africa skews just how much diversity is present there. In this study, they used the same population clustering algorithm, but instead significantly increased the number of African individuals. Now notice how, just increasing African sampling, there's no less than 6 African clusters identified, and that all Europeans belong to the North African one. By simply sampling Africa more thoroughly, we find that the diversity present in Africa actually represents the diversity of the world. The last definition that is sometimes invoked, though one admittedly less free from culture as the previous two, is that all races can be distinguished by differences in some key adaptive trait. This has led to many white supremacists demonstrating their so-called superiority by chugging milk. A feat possible thanks to the persistence of lactase into adulthood. There is also widespread belief, even outside of white supremacist circles, that skin pigmentation is indicative of ancestry. That is, the darker you are, the more related you are. And finally, the go-to asserted difference among neo-Nazis is the claim that the Nordic race is intellectually superior to all others. Of course, East Africans have a long history of pastoralism that goes back more than 5,000 years, with milk drinking being almost universal among the Sudanese and the Ethiopians. In fact, Hassan in 2016 showed that there exists multiple genetic variants for lactase persistence, shown by the pie charts in the figure here. Each color represents a different variant. At the bottom panel is a sample of Europeans and their most common variants. Notice that all 3 of the European variants are present in Africa. Indeed, the Fulani people have a high prevalence of the same genetic variants that are most common in Europe. Next, it has long been recognized that skin pigmentation is an adaptation to UV radiation. Shown in the top panel is UV incidence across the globe, with brighter colors representing areas of the most intense UV. 2 of the most extreme areas are West Africa and Melanesia, followed by India and South Asia. Below is the melanin index on the y-axis against absolute latitude on the x. Notice that both Melanesia and West Africa have the highest melanin index, despite the fact that some West Africans are more related to Europeans than they are to Melanesians. Again, skin pigmentation is not indicative of biological race. It is indicative of the environmental selection for a specific trait. And that trait has been independently selected in different locations along the same environmental gradient. Lastly, white supremacists assert that there exist biological differences between the races for intelligence. They point to graphs like the one showed here, depicting IQ scores by country. They weaponize these graphs to suggest that Africans are less intelligent than Europeans. This grossly misunderstands how IQ is measured, what it's actually representing, and the true causal factors of IQ differences across the globe. Studies have consistently shown that environment, not inherited biological differences, explain the overwhelming majority of difference in measured intelligence. Let's walk through several of these studies. So first, Bates et al. In 2013 showed that the variance in intelligence was positively correlated with childhood socioeconomic status, leading them to conclude that, quote, genetic effects on intelligence were compatible with a complete dependence on socioeconomic status for their manifestation. With this in mind, we can compare the graph on the right with the one shown previously for IQ. Instead of IQ, this graph shows the percent of the population by country that lives below the poverty line. Notice how this exactly.
And this right here just common damn sense, but you have people arguing. These pro-blackers are arguing, oh, education system not made for our kids. And it's not because we're struggling or anything like that. It's just that this is white education. It's the same argument, man. Oh, SATs are catered for white people, even though Asians outperform. But anyway, they make these different arguments and they make it seem as if it's a biological or genetic argument. Like these things are not sitting well with Black American kids is because they are biologically predisposed to not be able to perform in this certain structure. It's not the case. It's just these people are going through social economic issues that's making their education worse. Have nothing to do with biology, but this is the fruits of this racial typological thinking, like Mutesa was bringing out.
Mirrors the previous graph. If socioeconomic status is the primary driver in differences in IQ, then it makes perfect sense that we'd see the lowest IQ scores in countries where the largest percentage of the population is in poverty. An entire separate discussion can be had as to why these countries are in poverty. But succinctly, centuries of Western colonialism in Africa and Latin America has had severe impacts on the economic and societal growth of these regions. So, how much can genetics explain differences in cognition among all humans? A massive genome wide association study of 1.1 million people found that 7 to 10% of the variance could be explained by genetics. A similar metric, educational attainment, which is just a measure of schooling each sample has, explained up to 13% of the variance. Considering each of these indicates that the environment explains more than 85% of the variance in intelligence among humans. So, a follow up study looked at the specific variation for cognition that this study found and subset it by individuals that were self identified as white or Black. They then compared if there was a significant difference between these two. In the graph on the right, the x-axis represents the differences in polygenic scores, a measure of how much genetic variance is contributing to a trait between Blacks and whites. The y-axis is just the count of these differences. The blue bars are simulated random distribution, with the black line being the actual difference. They found no evidence for a genetic difference in cognition between Blacks and whites, as indicated by the black line falling within the random simulation and the p-value being 0.432. Another way of saying this is that there's an almost 50% probability that the observed difference is explained by chance alone. Furthermore, many studies have dug into factors that contribute to intelligence measures, such as IQ, and found that biological factors can easily be overcome by just changing the environment. This study showed that children that were in the foster care system showed significantly improved IQ compared to those in similar situations, but that were not removed from the home. If IQ were solely a biological measure, as white supremacists assert, no change in the environment should be able to improve it. Here are two additional education studies that have investigated the test score gaps between whites and Blacks in the United States, which has a long history of segregation and racism that has persisted at the state level well into the 1970s. The first, by Klein et al., write that, quote, our work suggests that socioeconomic status continues to be a key determinant of Black-white test score gaps, which is often underappreciated in current education discussions. Additionally, any policy that boosts household socioeconomic resources can be viewed as a potential to change the Black education gap. A similar study by Michael Moore and Rich examined three axes of test score gaps: differences in family, school, and neighborhoods. They found that family economic disadvantage explained significantly more of the test score gap than other measures. When these measurements were statistically controlled for, they found that over 60% of the gap could be reversed. Lastly, this study found a strong positive correlation between racial socioeconomic disparity, shown on the x-axis, and test score gaps between whites and blacks on the top panel and whites and Hispanics on the bottom. They write, quote, economic, demographic, segregation, and schooling characteristics explain 43 to 72% of the geographic variation in these gaps. The strongest correlates of achievement gaps are local racial ethnic differences in parental income and educational attainment, local average parental education levels, and patterns of racial ethnic segregation, consistent with a theoretical model in which family socioeconomic factors affect educational opportunity partly through residential and school segregation patterns. To be clear, supposed differences between ethnically defined races in intelligence is an artifact that reflects the long history of Western colonialism, the slave trade, interventionism during the Cold War that destabilized economies and the socio-political landscape of countries across the Southern Hemisphere, state-sponsored segregation and apartheid, all of which have cast a long shadow over the economic development of countries that, shown here, display the lowest IQ scores. Study after study have shown that IQ scores are not innate biological measures, but are capturing the socioeconomic status of the individual and their family. Thus, the differences we see between these two maps are not absolute. They are relative to the current status quo, which means they can be changed. Each of these definitions fail, demonstrating that human race as a biological concept simply does not exist. It does not fit any scientific definition of a subgroup that would be relevant to any other organism. Again, cultural and social definitions of race absolutely exist, but this video is specifically addressing the biological aspect. Population geneticist Alan Templeton, in his chapter Evolution and Notions of Human Race in the Princeton Guide to Evolution, writes concerning the question of the reality of the human race, quote, using a culture-free, objective definition of race, the answer to the question whether races exist in humans is clear and unambiguous: no. Human evolutionary history has been dominated by gene flow and admixture that unifies humanity into a single evolutionary lineage. This finding does not mean that all human populations are genetically identical. However, most genetic variation exists as differences among individuals, with between population differences being very small. There are no biological races in humans. Indeed, despite our global distribution, we are one of the most genetically homogeneous species on this planet. Thanks so much for being here. This is a topic that I feel particularly strong about and felt it was necessary given the rhetoric that I've seen both on YouTube as well as in broader society concerning race.
So there, you got your answer. Race is fucking fake. It don't matter. You niggas gonna go back to doing what y'all been doing. I'm out, man. Keep a Glock. Get out of here, man. You shiesty shit, nigga. Niggas just fucking retarded anyway. What's the point? Go ahead.
I'm for them grave. You already know how this shit go. Shout out DG Prowder, you touch me. Don't even look at me. You already know how this shit go. Back the fuck up. All you bop assholes, all you goofy ass niggas. Drums, we got sticks, ayy, ayy. We got drums, ayy, 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 ayy. We got drums, we got sticks, ayy, ayy, ayy. Bitch, don't run, you get hit, ayy. Ooh, I fell in love with my blick, ayy, ayy, ayy. ayy. We been through all type of shit, ayy, ooh. Ain't no day, suck this dick, bitch, ayy. In that straight, this bitch stick shit, ayy. You should see the way this bitch drips, ayy. Ain't no ride home, you getting a lift, bitch, ayy. Walk up in a club, I got my heat in that bitch, ayy. Standing on the couch, I got my feet on that bitch, ayy. Da Vinci had to tow me cause I'm fleeting a bitch, ayy. My car is pushed to start, don't need no key for that shit, ayy. Bitch, I make you run. This a blickathon. I can't rate that bitch a 10. I give that bitch a 1. Now give my niggas some. Until my niggas come. You can tell these bitches anything. These bitches dumb. You brought your biggest gun. We brought a bigger gun. Ain't no stingy nigga. I'm gon' give your niggas some. Christmas time came around. I bought my bitch a gun. Shorty chewed up on his dick like it's a stick of gum. Yeah, I smoke exotics. And my bitch exotic. And my car robotic. Ain't no question if I fucked your wife, that bitch a boppy, ayy. Ain't no question if I got my pipe, cause bitch, I got it. We got drums, we got sticks, ayy. Bitch, don't run, you get hit, ayy. I fell in love with my blick, ayy. We been through all type of shit, ayy. Ain't no day, suck this dick, bitch. In that straight, this bitch stick shit. You should see the way this bitch drips. Ain't no ride home, you getting a lift, bitch. Got my blick on me, my stick on me, yo bitch on me. Don't get blicked on me, I shoot it to this bitch on E. Ain't no shooting at no cars, I shoot this bitch on feet. Then we shoot straight to the block, now we back on D. Bitch, I never care. We be everywhere. It's a blickathon. We might shoot it anywhere. Bitch, I'm never scared. I keep my weapon near. Matter of fact, I'm double-breasted. My shit come in pairs. Soon as I walk inside the club, I get the clutching. Took my shirt off in that bitch, that's cause I'm bustin'. Bitch, nigga thought it was when it really wasn't. Soon as we left the club, we let off a dozen. No, we let off a dub. We was off some drugs. We weren't shooting at no whips, bitch. We was walking up. All my killers blood, make you cough it up. Shouldn't have mentioned phone up name, you shouldn't have brought it up. We got drums, we got sticks, ayy. Bitch, don't run, you get hit, ayy. I fell in love with my blick, ayy. We been through all type of shit, ayy. Ain't no day, suck this dick, bitch. Ayy. In that straight, this bitch stick shit. You should see the way this bitch drips. Ain't no ride home, you getting a lift, bitch.